What would you do if you flew home early after spending an entire year abroad,
किस कर रहे हो?
hoping to surprise your best
खाना लाया हूँ।
friend, only to find her standing at the door in tears saying, "You're not supposed to be here yet"? What started as a simple surprise quickly uncovered a secret that had been months in the making. This heartwarming story is about friendship, loyalty, and the incredible lengths one person went to make sure someone they cared about never felt forgotten. Before we jump into this emotional story, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another inspiring story. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get started. After spending a year studying abroad in Europe, I finally boarded a flight home to Seattle, Washington. The experience had been incredible, but there wasn't a day when I didn't miss my family, my friends, and especially Sarah. She had been my best friend since college, the person who encouraged me to apply for the program when I was too afraid to leave home. Throughout the year, she listened to my stories, checked on me during difficult times, and reminded me that I always had someone waiting for me back in the United States. Wanting to thank her in person, I decided to return 2 weeks earlier than planned and keep it completely secret. The flight home felt endless, but excitement kept me awake. I imagined every detail of the surprise. Sarah would probably be at work when I landed, so I planned to show up at her apartment unannounced. I pictured her opening the door, screaming in surprise, and pulling me into a hug. The thought made me smile during the entire taxi ride from the airport. Seattle's familiar streets passed by the window as memories flooded back. By the time the taxi stopped outside her building, my heart was racing. I grabbed my suitcase, paid the driver, and hurried toward the entrance without telling anyone I had arrived. As I climbed the stairs to Sarah's apartment, I felt nervous in the best possible way. It had been a year since I had seen her face to face. We had talked through video calls and messages, but it wasn't the same. Standing outside her door, I took a deep breath and knocked. For several seconds there was no response. Then I heard footsteps approaching. The door slowly opened and Sarah appeared. At first, she simply stared at me as though she couldn't believe what she was seeing. The excitement I expected never came. Instead, her face turned pale and tears instantly filled her eyes. She looked shocked, almost frightened. "Sarah?" I asked, confused. "What's wrong?" She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes moved from my face to the suitcase beside me. For a moment, it seemed as though she was trying to process something impossible. Then she shook her head and whispered, "You're not supposed to be here yet." The words hit me like a punch. I had expected happiness, maybe even laughter, but not this reaction. My mind immediately began searching for explanations. Had something happened while I was away? Was someone hurt? Was she in trouble? Before I could ask another question, Sarah stepped aside and gestured for me to come inside. The moment I entered the apartment, my confusion only grew. The living room looked completely different from the last time I had seen it. Dozens of photographs covered the walls. Strings of decorations hung from the ceiling. A large banner with my name stretched across the room. Boxes filled with party supplies sat in every corner. On a nearby table were printed guest lists, envelopes, and what appeared to be stacks of invitations. Sarah stood quietly behind me while I took it all in. Tears continued rolling down her cheeks. Looking around at the carefully planned decorations, I realized this wasn't an accident. Somehow, my surprise visit had interrupted something far bigger than I could have imagined. I stood in the middle of the apartment, trying to make sense of everything around me. The walls were covered with photos from different stages of my life. Some had been taken before I left for Europe, while others were screenshots from our video calls throughout the year. There were decorations, balloons, and handwritten notes scattered across tables. Sarah finally sat down and let out a long breath. "I can't believe you're here." "Already?" she said with a nervous laugh. Her reaction no longer seemed strange. Instead, it looked like the response of someone whose carefully planned secret had suddenly fallen apart. I sat beside her and waited for an explanation. Sarah began telling me everything. 6 months earlier, she had contacted my parents and a few close friends with an idea. Since I had spent an entire year away from home, she wanted my return to be unforgettable. What started as a small gathering quickly turned into something much larger. Friends from different states agreed to travel to Seattle. Former classmates, co-workers, and even neighbors from my childhood had been invited. Everyone had worked together behind my back to keep the surprise hidden. The closer my scheduled return date became, the more effort Sarah poured into making every detail perfect. She showed me a folder filled with plans, schedules, and reservation receipts. A local community hall had been booked weeks in advance. Caterers had already been hired. There was even a large video presentation that dozens of people had contributed to. Some recorded funny stories about our friendship, while others shared memories and messages of support. Sarah explained that she spent many nights editing videos, designing invitations, and coordinating guests across different time zones. Every free moment she had was dedicated to the event. Looking through the materials, I realized just how much work she had invested. It wasn't just a party, it was a labor of love. As Sarah spoke, I felt a mixture of guilt and gratitude. My attempt to surprise her had accidentally ruined the surprise she had spent months creating for me. Yet she never seemed angry. Instead, she laughed about it and admitted that seeing me at the door had overwhelmed her emotions. For an entire year, she had counted down the days until my return. She had imagined the celebration so many times that my unexpected arrival completely caught her off guard. I wrapped my arms around her and thanked her for everything she had done. Neither of us said much after that. We simply sat there smiling, relieved to finally be together again. 2 weeks later, the celebration took place exactly as planned. The community hall was packed with friends, relatives, and familiar faces I hadn't seen in years. The video presentation brought laughter and tears to nearly everyone in the room. As I looked around at the people who had traveled long distances just to welcome me home, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Sarah stood nearby, watching the event unfold with a smile that finally matched the one I had expected on the day I returned. In that moment, I understood why she had cried when she opened the door. Her reaction wasn't disappointment at all. It was the emotional release of someone who had spent an entire year making sure I would always know how much I was loved and remembered.